All right, we are coming up on 7:02. Give it just a few more seconds here, minute maybe. While I get my other document open. Give me just another second or two or three here. All right, good enough by me. If it's good enough by you, it is 7:02 and a half, maybe. And it's time for the South Carolina Normal Cannabis Conversation. Um, my name's Scott Weldon, Executive Director of South Carolina Normal, and I'm going to start. Boy, that camera looks weird. By welcoming everybody here that's on the call with us today. Also, welcome to anybody that might be watching this live streaming to YouTube. And lastly, welcome to anybody who might be watching this as a recording on YouTube. I do like to point out, and this will be the last time I need to do this, that while we are on the Zoom calls and live streaming to YouTube, we are not monitoring the comment section on YouTube. So if you do have any questions, comments, and or concerns, leave them down below in the comment section, off to the side, whatever your device uses. And once YouTube is done processing the video, we will go back in and try and answer and or address your questions, comments, and or concerns. With that said, let's go ahead and kick off with our disclaimer, as always, that all of our meetings are an environment of education and awareness and are not an open market for the sale, purchase, or distribution of cannabis. We do not encourage or condone illegal behavior of any kind. Little frog, cricket, something in the throat tonight. All righty. Kind of excited more for next week than for tonight, but tonight is the second Wednesday of the month. And as always, on the second Wednesday of the month, the topic basically is our monthly public normal meeting. These are the meetings that we used to actually have in person. Back when I founded South Carolina, actually Low Country Normal, back in January of 2017, we would go out once a month to a local dining establishment, I guess would be the best way to phrase it. Usually someplace that had some food, some beverage, and hopefully a little quiet enough spot for us to try and have a meeting. Those were fun and interesting times, I must admit. You know, some of our meetings were pretty well attended and some of them not so much. And with some of those not so much attending ones, inspired us to, in January, I believe it was, of 2019, shift all of our public meetings to a Zoom account. And those eventually became part of the, well, actually we were running those on a different day, and then eventually using that Zoom account, we thought, why not try and get a weekly conversation going? And then eventually we merged the two together so that now the meetings take place on one of the Wednesdays of the month that we're doing our cannabis conversation. Kind of a long story there, a little bit. But anyway, we are now, and we talked about this, I think, last week a little bit. We are now in the process of evolving again with the cannabis conversation. This will be our last call that will be done on Zoom. I'm hoping that this is a couple of things. It's going to do for us, I think, a couple of things. One, I'm hoping it makes it a little easier for people who want to participate and in our calls, where I've had a number of people say, oh, you know, I have to remember the login and this password, and you know, it's sometimes it doesn't connect for me, or Then people have to adjust their cameras or their microphones and all that kind of fun stuff. So what we are going to be doing starting next week, as a matter of fact, starting next week, next Wednesday at 7, we're switching our platform from Zoom to StreamYard. StreamYard is an application, a browser-based application that will stream podcasts, I guess would be the best phrase for it, or broadcast, yeah, podcasts, whatever, to multiple social media accounts at the same time. What it's going to allow us to do is utilize our Facebook, our Twitter, and our YouTube accounts so that we can live stream our cannabis conversation and our monthly meetings directly to those platforms. The one thing that we weren't able to do, that we aren't able to do here on Zoom, is although we're able to stream over to YouTube or Facebook, we couldn't do both. And even when we were able to stream to one and or the other, we couldn't see the comment section. Hence my little notification a few moments ago to YouTube users. What will be you make me smile, Josh. What StreamYard will allow us to do is to actually stream to all 3 of these social media platforms, and then we have a window where we can actually see when people are commenting on those streams, and it'll have an icon next to each commenter, letting us know what platform they're commenting from. But we can address all of the comments through this StreamYard application. And that will be your way, our participants' way, should I say, most people's way of participating in the future cannabis conversation is through commenting. The streaming application allows very limited people into the actual what they call their studio. I think we can have a max of 10 people, which would probably be myself and Vaughn, who's going to be our co-host, and up to 8 other people. But it also has some, so it's not going to allow us, like Zoom does, up to 100 people in the same room in the same call. When we had Joe Cunningham on last year, we had a pretty full room. I think we had, oh heck, I don't want to elaborate or embellish too much, but I think we had about 60 some people in our Zoom room at that time. So, we, for that option, we needed to purchase a Zoom upgrade to allow more than, I think it was, well, that, and to allow more than a 20-minute conversation. I think that was one of the other limitations, is number of people and time frame. So now with the StreamYard application, it's going to allow us to do our podcast, be able to actually invite guests in, and then have our viewers, participants that are viewing on the live stream to be able to, again, interact with us and any special guests that we may have on through the commenting section. I found over the past couple of years of doing this that a lot of our participants really prefer to comment through commenting and not so much turning on their mic and speaking. Anyway, so that's going to be starting next week. Great thing about it, like I said earlier, no need to worry about logins and passwords. You just go to our go to those platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and or YouTube at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night. Go to our page if you're doing like Facebook or Twitter. Go to our channel if you're going on YouTube, and wait for the countdown for the conversation to start. The other thing I'm really hoping it will allow us to do is get a broader reach. Get more people to actually come on board and participate by utilizing more than one platform. My thoughts on this are, we've been streaming to YouTube. I think we streamed to Facebook once, and then we switched it up and decided, I decided, should I say, to stream to YouTube instead. I think mainly for the reason of having, let's call it a library of our conversations. That was a little bit easier to search and find stuff on. Facebook, I didn't really feel that that was always the case with pages. Yeah, you can click on if you click the right links, you can go and find videos pretty quickly. Excuse me, but then I don't know. I just thought YouTube was a video channel, you know, that was kind of the better place to go. So now, like I say, with the new streaming application, we will be able to do it to both, expanding our, and really, I think Facebook would have been preferable over all these past couple of years while we've been doing it, for just the extra reach that we would have. But now we've got both. We've got about 100, which isn't a lot, but 102 subscribers on our YouTube channel. We've got 4,000 plus, I think 44, not quite 4,500 followers on our Facebook page. A big difference there as far as those numbers go. But what we're hoping to do is, like I say, be able to follow, to build our following on all of these platforms. Twitter, I never even really thought about videos on Twitter, but that was one of the options, and we have a Twitter. So, and I gotta admit, some of our followers do Twitter pretty regularly. I mean, there's some that'll message me through Twitter. I see more of their activity on there than there are on maybe Facebook. A lot of people say Facebook's for old people. You know, I don't know. And I'm hoping there's no way for us to get on TikTok, because that's just not something I'm feeling like doing. Unless you want to see me dance. I don't know. Never mind. I take that back. Anyway, so that was sort of the long intro here this evening on what's coming up starting next week. Is going to be the new format for our calls. So please remember to join in at 7 o'clock on one of those platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and or YouTube. I'm probably not going to be sending out the reminders through Messenger and through messaging and some of those things that I have done with some of our regular participants, like I have been for a while. So please mark your calendars, set yourself a timer or something on your phone. Quite honest with you, that is one of the things I love the most about my cell phone, is it communicates to my watch. It says, hey, this alarm's going off. You've got something on schedule. And I'm like, oh, duh, yeah. Thank you, technology. So anyway, utilize that technology, set yourself some reminders, include a link if you like to our whatever media you want to, social media you want to follow it on, and continue to join the conversation. All right, it is called a shotgun shell. Sounds like a blast. It does. Legally smoked in Florida. Oh, yeah. So our normal Wednesday, second Wednesday conversation starts with federal policy, political, legislative happenings. Let's call it that. What's going on legislatively at the federal level? I will be quite honest with you. I missed my last update call with National on what's going on federally. So my news is probably a little old. And really, where we're at this point, not a lot is changing anytime, very quickly. As a reminder, we are less than 2 months from Election Day. I did not see that quote, but I will take that as gospel. Josh says that Biden said he has no plans to deschedule ahead of the midterms. I wouldn't think he would. If he did, I think it would sound, I think he would be accused of it being a desperate grab for votes. But anyway, so interesting news. If you do happen to have a link for that, let me know. Otherwise, I will probably end up Googling it or something a little bit later, just to see what maybe was said. But yeah, I must admit, I did not sit in on on the last call. So the notes I have here are from about 2-3 weeks ago. The biggest news that we've had recently was a couple of months back when COA, the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, was introduced. As we all know, it is not going to go anywhere or do anything through the rest of 2022. As I briefly just mentioned, we have elections coming up November 8th. So we are less than 2 months from Election Day. And that's where a lot of energies and focuses are going to be over the next couple of months. There are some federal seats up for grabs here in South Carolina. Tim Scott seat for one. I'm not really thrilled about his opponent, but better than Tim. I'll put it, at least in my opinion. Also, and I've said this a couple times, or maybe a couple times, but U.S. House District 4, which is Timmons. Hang on, do I have it open in front of me? William Timmons, who gets a D in the Smoke the Vote guide. There is a write-in candidate who's running against him, Lee Turner. Lee Turner is pro-cannabis. I have not sent Lee our cannabis questionnaire yet. I'm sort of dragging my feet on it a little bit, but it's my understanding that even as a write-in, once her write-in candidacy is updated in somebody's software somewhere, it should show up in the Smoke the Vote guide. And so we can actually then get her answers and her grade into that format. Otherwise, I'm not going to sit and talk a lot today about election stuff. That's coming in down the road in the next couple of weeks. But anyway, so yeah, one of the latest legislations to schedule was the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. Will not be going anywhere at the moment. The other descheduling bill that we always like to talk about, especially because she's a legislator from South Carolina, is Nancy Mace's States Reform Act. Marijuana moment. Okay. I don't have the link in front of me, but I know that was shared with us a while back. An interview that she had done and was talking about, where she and her cannabis policy are headed at the moment. And of course, a lot of it depends on if she gets reelected in District 1, U.S. House District 1. She does have a pro-cannabis opponent. It's going to be kind of an interesting race because it's sort of a teeter-totter district. This is the district that Joe Cunningham had, I believe, for one term as a freshman legislator or House congressman. Of course, on some of the new commercials from McMaster, we're getting to see those pictures of Cunningham crack a beer and stuff on the House floor. playing him off as a frat boy. I don't know, antics, showmanship, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, so anyway, he was in that House District Seat 1. Nancy Mace came in, ran a strong race against him, and flipped from that seat back to a Republican seat. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was the seat that Katie Arrington held before Cunningham. I don't know. We're going back a few years, and I wasn't following the politics in South Carolina that closely. Anyway, latest poll show McMaster's only ahead by 8 points. I hate that he's ahead at all. There's like absolutely no way that I want McMaster as our governor again, but that's my opinion. You may have a different one. So anyway, that was, oh yes, I was talking about Nancy and that bill. And I believe, if I remember correctly from that conversation we had a couple of weeks back, number of weeks back, you know, basically her position was she's going to be concentrating on the election first, you know, knowing that her bill was not going to proceed anywhere prior to the elections, or at least not believing so. Although she had been told by Chuck Schumer a while back that she would be allowed a, let's call it a hearing, I believe, on her bill, and nothing has come up of that yet. I'd like to see something come up and see what happens. But again, with that seat under election coming up in November, everything's kind of moot until after the election. So we'll have to see what happens there. If she does not re-win that seat, that bill's dead and won't be going anywhere. So, as always, we talk a little bit about the Safe Banking Act. That was added to, I believe, the America Competes Act is what my notes have here. They're also talking about adding in some language to benefit veterans, allowing veterans, is this the one, access, also not having them penalized in, I want to say, mortgage lending, something about cannabis and mortgage lending. And also in some of that was allowing for SBA loans to small cannabis businesses, and talks of expungement. Federally, I don't see anything really going on through the election. I would like to see something happen. You know, we had hoped to hear more back in August, but August kind of came and went. I will definitely be sure to attend my next update with our federal advisor at national level. A little talk from Booker. Okay, I haven't heard anything from Booker, but I'll have to take a peek. Schumer's been silent about the bill. Absolutely. There's been absolutely no talk about that. And so federally, you know, we're still where we tend to be. They find other priorities that they would rather push ahead and, you know, put any kind of cannabis legislation on that back burner. State level, where are we at time wise? I just want to take a quick peek. We're almost at 7:30, so I might as well kind of start flipping over. State level, again, we are in that I guess we'll call it lame duck period of our session. We will be beginning the new session in January, and now I've got to go look at my calendar because I want to see it's January Tuesday the 11th. Tuesday the 10th. All right. January, Tuesday, the 10th in January. That will be the first day of the new session of the South Carolina legislature. As many of you know, South Carolina runs a 2-year legislature, so we are tail ending the second year here. The hope has always kind of been, I'll say 2 years ago, that the Compassionate Care Act would be proposed, which it will be probably again on January 10th, the first day of session, unless for some reason Tom Davis decides to early submit. It's usually that first day that a lot of new legislation gets submitted. And my understanding is, well, and what many of us always hope for is, oh, January the 10th, it's going to be submitted. Let's see if we can get it passed by, May, by the crossover dates, deadlines and such like that. At least get it over to the other house and then get it, excuse me, get it passed, that first portion of the first year. Rarely does that kind of stuff ever happen. Instead, it lingers and it hangs and it waits until that second year. And we've seen it happen in both halves of the session, where you'll get to that end of session date or that crossover date. Many times it's that crossover date, and the legislation never made it out of committee or never made it, or if it did make it out of committee, never got a floor vote to actually get it voted out of that particular House or Senate and over to the other. So I don't really expect a whole lot to happen with the Compassionate Care Act come 2023. I expect most of the activity of it to be more 2024. I don't know why it would be different than that. I mean, I would really love to see it pass right away. The other thing that we're kind of hoping to look for after the elections, and some funky stuff going on the screen, after the election is going to be, first off, figuring out who is now going to be legislators in what seat, but then starting to reach out to those legislators and trying to get some other cannabis legislation written and proposed. Again, until the elections, we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the governor's seat, if we're going to flip from a Republican to a Democrat, or if we're going to stay with a Republican governor. The House and Senate are probably a pretty different story. We're pretty certain we know that it's not going to flip. And it's probably going to stay Republican-dominated House, Republican-dominated Senate. And so depending on, what happens with the governor's race, we'll sort of determine how things play out. Excuse me while I let this phone ring out. Hate spammers. So, that's going to be the big thing, is if we do want to find legislators to propose legislation for us, they most probably should be a Republican legislator, because what happens when you get the House or Senate controlled by one party or the other, for the most part, that controlling party also controls the chairs and controls the different committees. It is the chairs of those committees that decide what legislation is going to get consideration. Here's a good example. There were at least 3 simple possession decriminalization bills proposed in South Carolina legislature last year. I want to say there was a couple in the House, a couple in the Senate. I'm not sure exactly how the split was. I think predominantly they were in the Senate. They were introduced. They were assigned to committee. And just because they're assigned committee doesn't mean the committee is ever going to acknowledge receipt of that legislation, or, acknowledge that legislation, or ever schedule it for any type of hearing and or discussion. And so that's typically what happens. It has happened. Like I say, all of that legislation to decriminalize, all democratically sponsored legislation. One of them had a number of co-sponsors to it. I want to say 30. I might be mistaken on that. But again, it was a democratically sponsored legislation in a Republican-controlled legislature. It was never acknowledged. It was never going to receive a hearing and or discussion. So no matter what your politics are, I don't prefer to identify as either. But whatever your politics are, the way our state is structured, if we want to try and move marijuana reform legislation forward, it pretty darn sure better be sponsored by a Republican member of that particular legislative house or Senate. That can be an uphill battle. Good example, if you go and you look at our Smoke the Vote guide and you kind of scroll on through, you will see that we probably have more support from Democratic candidates and less so from Republican candidates. I mean, just as a good example, you look at our governor's race, good old Henry, he's got an F. And we have Joe Cunningham and then a Bruce Reeves as independent. Reeves is kind of a decriminalization, medical use, but not for legalization, recreational use. Joe Cunningham, as you know from his press conference last year, wants full recreational legalization, decriminalization, medical use. On our Smoke the Vote guide, nothing is listed for any of the lieutenant governors. Lieutenant governors tend to just follow, or lieutenant governor candidates, should I say, just tend to follow whatever the policy of their running mate is. I'll real quick hit down here on race for Attorney General. We've got Alan Wilson. We know Alan is not a friend of cannabis. He again has an F, and Alan Wilson has no one running against him. So we know we're going to be stuck with Alan Wilson again, unless we get a new governor, and that governor, I think, can't the governor, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't the governor appoint the Attorney General? Doesn't make sense if there's a race for it. So maybe not. Maybe I'm mistaken there. But anyway, as we do scroll down the list, you are going to see a lot more green coming in. Matter of fact, just today I went in and I updated 4 new candidates that had answered our candidate questionnaire. And so I'm going to kind of skip the federal level ones up here at the top and just going to scoot down a little bit and start scrolling down. Many of these are House races. This is the year for House races, not Senate races. That'll be in 2 years, next year, somewhere in there. I think it's 2 years. But you'll see a lot more green. I mean, yes, we do still have some oranges and reds. But on both sides of the aisle, we're starting to get a little bit more of a mix. Good example. Although I don't have grades for them, House District 9, we have both candidates for, at least for medical use. Even here, House District 14, you've got one candidate who is pro-legalization, decriminalization, and medical, but even the other candidate is medical use. So we're seeing a little bit more balance coming in. Again, many of the ones that are showing favor cannabis law reform are the Democratic candidates. But there are some And I just want to scroll through, where was it? I want to say House District 116. Let me scroll all the way down to 116. Matt Lieber, I got his um, questionnaire back in a couple of days ago and updated it today. Again, you've got a Republican running for House District 16 that has an A rating with us in the Smoke the Vote Guide for federal legalization, for decriminalization, for medical use, whereas the Democratic opponent in that particular race has a B rating. They're for decriminalization of medical use, but not for full legalization. So they are starting to, starting to sort of get a little good mix going on both sides of the aisle here, which is starting to become a little bit more reflective of the people themselves. As we say repeatedly on here, and you all, I know, agree with me, cannabis reform is not a partisan issue. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, chances are good you want to see marijuana law reform. It's just our legislators that don't reflect the will of the people very well. And that's what we're kind of up against here. So for me, I love seeing, the more green on these, the better. I love seeing when we get candidates responding to our questionnaire, because it indicates to me that that candidate understands that this is an issue that needs to be addressed, and they need to acknowledge it. And they need to acknowledge their position on it. So we're getting more and more. They're coming along. Couple weeks more to kind of collect some more candidate responses to our questionnaire, and hopefully we'll the guide will help in some districts to have voters say, oh, look, between these two, well, I like this one because they do support marijuana law reform, where that one may or may not. I don't know how effective it really is, because I do often hear people say, I vote for party. I don't vote for, just one issue. But me, I'm an issue voter, and cannabis is an important issue to me. All righty. So federal state level. I'll come back around to that one more time. I got a little sidetracked on election stuff. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I said I wouldn't, but I did. But yes, watching these elections and seeing the results, right after November 8th, trying to determine who the legislators are going to be for the next 2-year cycle, and which one of them's may be worth approaching, or maybe, I guess worth approaching is the way to put it, to possibly sponsor legislation for some sort of reform law. Couple of the legislative bills that were shared, that were submitted in the past cycle, our current cycle actually. Smell of cannabis should not be grounds for a search of your vehicle, because hemp flower smells just like marijuana, and you can't tell by smelling which it is, so it should not be grounds for search or detainment. That one got sponsored. It never went anywhere, but it got sponsored. I think it's a great one. I think it should definitely be, based on where we are in our state at the moment. We have the legal hemp, although the Attorney General's opinion letter may differ. Smokable hemp is legal in South Carolina, and that is by legislation. As Tom Davis, he was not pleased with that opinion letter from the Attorney General. But anyway, so things like that. And of course, one of my big pet peeves is, pre-employment drug testing. I really think that there should be legislation submitted to do away with pre-employment cannabis testing. If you need to test that people are, are capable of doing the job, or if they're impaired or something, do impairment testing. Just because they have a chemical compound or a metabolite in their system that lingers and stores in the fatty material and tissues of their body for extended periods of time, they should not be discriminated against in the job marketplace. And it happens far too often. I mean, until when Reagan implemented that stuff back in the 80s, I immediately left the regular workplace. I was not going to pee in a cup for a job. I thought that was an invasion of privacy. And I just wasn't going to do it. If I can do the job, let me have the job, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that one's got a little bit of a spot in my heart. I would love to see pre-employment cannabis testing done away with. There's lots, and you guys know, there's lots of legislation that really should be proposed and moved forward and passed. If they deschedule, federal level, that might just help a lot of other issues. But until then, that's kind of where we are. All right. Well, y'all, I see we're about almost 7:45 now. So I think I'm going to throw it out there before I ramble on for my last little bit here. If anybody has any questions, comments that they'd like to throw in here about anything we've talked about tonight on either federal and or state legislative policy or where we are legislatively on that kind of stuff. All right. Then I'm going to kind of wrap things up just a little bit with talking about, I guess I'll call it chapter business and coming events. This Saturday, if you caught our newsletter or happen to see, I think a Facebook post on it or something, we are doing a South Carolina NORML Day at the beach. We are going to be sending up our booth. And for those of you that saw us last time, new booth, our booth was trashed. It looked dirty. So anyway, we got a new booth. Weather permitting, we will set it up. If it's not too windy, you know how those 10 by 10 pop-up tents can be in the wind on the beach. Although this is basically, I'm going to call it a weather determined event. Crappy weather, we're not going. I'll be straight up with you. But so far, weather's looking pretty good for that day. There's a small chance of a little thunderstorm passing along somewhere. But we get those little pop-up storms and showers pretty regularly. That's not what I'm really worried about. I just don't want a huge downpour and an all day of rain and that kind of stuff. So Folly Beach on Saturday, the 17th, I plan on getting there and starting to set things up about 10:30. So if you're there like 11 o'clock or so, or if you want to come a little bit early and help me set things up, that'd be great. Not going to have a whole lot of entertainment or activities going on. We'll be bringing brochures to hand out to people, postcards for them to mail to their legislators if they live here in South Carolina. I haven't really fully figured out anything beyond that except for setting up our basic booth and having a couple of freebies to hand out like brochures and postcards. Being on the beach, I don't want to bring a whole lot of stuff. I will not be bringing like our t-shirts for an example, because I don't want to bring them back home again all covered in sand and stuff like that. Also, I have in front of me now, I will probably bring these along. I just have to kind of keep them from blowing away too much and such. But after our press conference back in February, we have a bunch of our signs left. So I will be bringing some signs along. People are welcome to sign. They can take them home, hang them in their living room, their front window. The more places you can think to hang them, the better. These are two-sided signs, so you will have one side that may say, "Yes, we cannabis," or use cannabis, and then you flip them over, and the backside do the same on all of them. South Carolina NORML. Spread the word about South Carolina NORML. We really need the support. We need the help. Moving into this new legislative session, I'd like to be a little bit better prepared than I have been in past years. I want to say last year was probably the first year that I felt really prepared as we were rolling into the beginning of our January session and prepping for our press conference and lobby day. So that's something I'm going to be kind of starting to work on here in the background a little bit over the next couple of months as well, as we're leading up to November. By the time the elections are done, I want to have a pretty good solid plan for our lobby day. All righty. That was this Saturday. Oh, last one, and I will mention this real quick, but you can always check out our coming events page on our website. We are also planning one more event so far, well, a couple of more, but the next one after this weekend will be October 22nd, and that is going to be our picnic. See if I can find a link for this real quick, and I will ask you all to RSVP there. Nope, I don't see it. Go ahead and keep an eye on our social media for the next couple of days, next week or so, to watch for that. I know where I can find it. I just want to give you the RSVP link. This is going to be in North Charleston. So depending on where you're located, it may not be super close to home for you. But here we go. Here is the link for the picnic. October 22nd, which again will be a Saturday, planned roughly from 11 o'clock to 4:20 in the afternoon. We ask that folks bring a covered dish or something to share, RSVP, so we know how many are coming. And my plan is with that number then to calculate hamburgers, hot dogs, rolls, sodas, soft drinks, kind of stuff. So we'll bring some of those basics and provide that for y'all, and then ask y'all to kind of fill in around the edges with some covered dish stuff. So that is the picnic. All righty. That is all I have for you tonight. I'm really kind of excited and looking forward to next week. I'm hoping y'all will give me some feedback after our meeting next week to let me know how you like the new format, how you like the live stream, how it works for you on whatever platform you choose to follow us or to participate on. Remember, you can participate live by commenting, and we'll be able to respond to those comments as we go through, and hopefully even get some input from others on those comments. So looking forward to it. You will not need the link or the passwords anymore to be coming onto the Zoom. Go right to those platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and or YouTube, and follow us as we live stream every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. All right, folks, I want to thank you all for being here with me. As always, I really appreciate you taking the time and sitting in with me and listening to me ramble on. I'm thinking we've got a couple of things in the works over the next few weeks, so make sure that you keep joining the Cannabis conversation to learn what those things are going to be. And again, to let us know what you think of the new format of the conversation after next week's call. In the meantime, don't forget, visit our website at scnormal.org. If you haven't already, scroll down to the bottom of that page and sign up for our newsletter. And besides that, just have yourselves a great week. We look forward to seeing you here again next Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Thank you all.